Edge of Sports on the PPI Network.
We are about to break the surly bonds of gravity and punch the face of God.
Left Jab Productions present Edge of Sports Radio, where sports and politics collide. And now your host, Dave Zirin.
The Schmata Kid.
Boom! Edge of Sports Radio here on the PPI Network and Sirius XM. I'm Dave Zirin. Joined this week by a man who giggles every time he says the word Pujols, Dan Hendricks. Dan, grow up, my man. What's up?
I'm trying, brother. I'm trying.
I know you're trying, but I'm trying too, because we got a hell of a show this week. We are going to speak to the author of the most controversial sports book of the 2011 calendar year. The book is called The Whore of Akron, Searching for the Soul of LeBron James. The author is Scott Raab. We are also going to talk about the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, east of Ventura Boulevard, and just south of Humboldt County, whatever the hell their name is, the Angels signing of Albert Pujols. And to talk about that subject, we have a true favorite of the show, the author of Cuban Star, the person who knows more about Latinos in baseball than anybody on the planet, Adrian Burgos. But first, the news of the day. The news of the day. Sorry, my hero growing up was Michael Winslow from the Police Academy movies. I still fantasize about making all sound effects with my mouth. It's like Bismarck, he said, music with my mouth, baby.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And like he said, picking boogers. That's more your song. But look, the news of the day is that the NBA has vetoed a 3-team trade that would have sent Chris Paul to the Lakers. And if Chris Paul had gone to the Lakers, it would have also have involved Pau Gasol and Lamar Odom, 2/4 of the almighty front court that led the Lakers to 2 championships in the last 3 years, along with Andrew Bynum as well, and of course Kobe Bryant in the backcourt with all his height and skill. Now, as part of this deal, the Rockets, the third team, would have gotten Gasol from the New Orleans Hornets, who would have received shooting guard Kevin Martin, power forward Luis Scola, point guard Goran Dragic, and possibly a first-round pick from Houston. Now, what we have to remember about all of this is that the NBA owns the New Orleans Hornets. The NBA owns the New Orleans Hornets. That means the other 29 teams own the New Orleans Hornets collectively. And so it was really them who nixed this deal through David Stern. They said it wasn't in the best interest of the league, effectively saying it wasn't in the best interest to create another super team in Los Angeles to go to battle against the Miami Heat. And so they nixed the deal. Now, why is this so important for us to think about right here? Well, it's important because we were told that the NBA lockout, the canceling of games, and all the rest of it was done to restore a power imbalance. Now, the power imbalance was always described very, very loosely. Is it power between owners and players? Or is it power between small market and big market owners? What you see with the NBA nixing this deal from the small market Hornets to the Lakers are NBA owners, the small market ones, asserting their supremacy over the league and saying, no, we don't want any more super teams because it hurts the competitive balance of the league. Now, there are 2 problems with them doing this. The first is that it's illegal. It's called collusion. It's illegal for the owners to do this, even though they all have a collective ownership of the Hornets. The second reason why it's highly problematic is because it's reinvoked the name of Dan Gilbert into the national discussion. Dan Gilbert is the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, the person who sent out that infamous public letter written in Comic Sans font. And this time, though, he wrote a letter that was for David Stern's eyes only. And it basically admits collusion and shows that the small market owners are trying to come together to stop big market teams from assembling players and creating these super teams. As he wrote, and I want to quote you from what's being known as the smoking gun of Dan Gilbert. It says, "It would be a travesty to allow the Lakers to acquire Chris Paul in the apparent trade being discussed. This trade should go to a vote of the 29 owners of the Hornets." See, that's collusion. He's admitting collusion right there because it's supposed to be the league office that makes decisions for the team, not the other owners, even though they own it. And then he says, I know the vast majority of owners feel the same way I do. When will we just change the name of 25 of the 30 teams to the Washington Generals? Now, the Generals are the team that's set up to lose in perpetuity to the Harlem Globetrotters. Look, there's so many problems with this argument, I can't even tell you. First of all, the team of the last decade was not the Lakers. It was another so-called small market team called the San Antonio Spurs. So that's the first issue. The second thing is that the whole small market, big market issue that's held up by the NBA is fictitious. It is fictitious. What's a big market? Chicago's a big market. Their payroll last year, $55 million. What's a small market? Well, Orlando's a small market. Their payroll last year, $110 million. Twice the payroll of Chicago. So it's not really about big market, small market. It's about the players themselves trying to assert control over their own careers and trying to create super teams to rival with the Miami Heat. Chris Paul wants to go to the Lakers. Actually, he wants to go to the Knicks to team up with Amari Stoudemire and Carmelo Anthony because Chris Paul wants to win championships. And if that means going to the Knicks, that's where he'll go. It's an arms race, and it's about players trying to impose their own will on their own talents. And here's where you get to the tricky issue of what the real issue in the collective bargaining struggle in the NBA lockout was all about. You think it was about money. And sometimes when people say, hey, if they say it's not about money, it's really about money. The other famous line from Danny DeVito in the movie Heist, he said, everybody loves money. That's why they call it money. But you know what? It's not about money. It's about power. Specifically, who owns the talent in the NBA. See, being an NBA worker is different than we've talked about this on the show, it's different than being like an auto worker. Not just because of the prices. You're an auto worker. You make a car. In other words, you labor, and then a car is produced. Or you're a shoemaker. You make a shoe. A shoe is produced. An NBA player is both labor and product. They are the labor in that it's their exertion, but the talent is the product. And so the question becomes by owners, who owns the talent? They want to be able to distribute the talent in a way that gives every team a fair shot. And players want to actually leverage their talent to go to places where they can make the most money through endorsements and win the most championships and have the best possible quality of life. You know, as Kevin Garnett said, his biggest regret of going to the Celtics was that he waited so long to do it. And he said, my message to these young guys is don't wait till you're limping like me in your 30s holding up some team that's not going to be able to win for you, because it's all about winning those rings. And I do believe that, too. It's all about chasing that chip for these players. That's what they are obsessed with. And Chris Paul's looking at the New Orleans Hornets, a team without an owner, and he's saying, there's no way this team is going to win a championship anytime soon. So he's thinking, I'm going to go where my talent can take me. Now you get into some very, very dicey political territory here. Because if the owners are saying they control the talent, and the players are saying the talent is the product of my labor, you get into a very dicey territory where players start to invoke those words. Plantation, slavery, ownership. Who owns me? And that's very dicey. First of all, it makes people very upset because they think, oh, this millionaire is comparing his life to the horrors of chattel slavery. But I would argue it speaks to something even different than that. It speaks to the question of who owns what I produce. In an auto factory, everybody knows who owns the cars. It's the CEO, stockholders. But when it's a player, and you're talking about who owns what I produce, which is me, because I am in effect producing myself, you get into very, very dicey and highly, highly combustible political territory. And you know what? This relates directly to the person we're going to interview after the break, Scott Rabb, because Scott Rabb hates LeBron James. Puts it out there on page 1. Can't stand him. And he can't stand him because LeBron James took his talents to South Beach. Well, whose talents are those anyway? That's the question we're going to talk about with Scott Rabb. This is Edge of Sports Radio. You could follow us on Twitter at Edge of Sports, and we'll be back right after this.
Edge of Sports Radio. Dave Zirin will return after this. Breaking news, in-depth coverage, unparalleled access to professional athletes. Edge of Sports on the PPI Network. With your host, Dave Zirin.